Hello, darling. Today's stories are not for the faint of heart. Cuddle in, get cozy, and let's start. Allow me to preface this by confessing that I've never been one to believe in the paranormal. While I'm entirely open to the existence of extraterrestrial life, the concept of ghosts and otherworldly entities has always met with my skepticism. Yet, my occupation at a sprawling hotel and golf club complex has recently introduced me to experiences that challenge my disbelief. Nestled within this complex is what we refer to as the clubhouse, a distinct structure from the main hotel, serving as a retreat where golfers often unwind with a drink post-game. As winter's embrace brings earlier nightfalls, around 5 p.m. daily, my evening shifts stretch into solitary hours, with human presence dwindling to none post 6 p.m. The incident in question unfolded just yesterday, a little past 7 p.m., as I commenced the nightly close-down rituals. With the majority of tasks ticked off my list, my attention turned to the day's revenue within the tranquility of the bar area. The clubhouse's architecture allows for a panoramic view over a grand event space, bordered by large windows and fire doors, integrating glass panes that offer a glimpse into the darkness beyond. It was during this routine task that my gaze lifted to meet an unsettling sight. A towering figure exceeding 6 feet, clad in black attire reminiscent of a suit, positioned against the backdrop of the night. His expression twisted into a laugh directed unmistakably at me. The sudden realization of my solitude amplified the fear, propelling me to mentally prepare for a potential confrontation. My weapon of choice became a chef's knife, forgotten in the haste of a concluded shift, which I discreetly pocketed as I ventured from the safety of the bar towards the external doors. The journey to confront, or perhaps escape the figure, required a brief traverse through a corridor, momentarily breaking our line of sight. This brief interlude, lasting no more than a few seconds, led to an eerie discovery. The man had vanished without a trace or clue to his departure. This unsettling encounter would have sufficed to unnerve anyone, but the true chill down my spine came the following day. A review of the CCTV footage with a colleague revealed an inexplicable anomaly. The camera capturing the outside area malfunctioned, ceasing operation at precisely 7:10 p.m., only to resume at 7:45 p.m., coincidentally, mere minutes after my departure. Intent on rationalizing these events, I plan to scrutinize the CCTV system further tomorrow. Should this examination fail to reveal a technical glitch, I am left to ponder the possibility of a supernatural explanation for this sequence of events. I invite any insights or theories that might shed light on this enigma, as the rational part of me seeks a logical explanation, while another, newly awakened part, wonders if what I encountered transcends the bounds of our current understanding. Hey there. Okay, so this might not sound all that scary or even real to some, but let me tell you, living through it was a whole different story. Just to give you a bit of background, we lived in a terraced house, which means our house was attached to our neighbors. It was a 2-story place with a couple of rooms upstairs, a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and a laundry room downstairs. Walking up to our house, you'd go through the patio, pass by the living room window to get to our front door. Most of the windows were about the height of an average person, so it was pretty easy for someone outside to peek in if they wanted to. That's the layout of our place. I've lived in that house since I was little, but most of these stories I'm about to tell you were passed down from my parents. And man, just thinking about it now sends shivers down my spine. When I was around 3 or 4 years old, I was playing outside, and my mom noticed I was giggling and chatting away with someone. Since we knew pretty much everyone in town, she didn't think much of it at first. But then, when she stepped outside for a smoke, she could see me from the patio, but couldn't spot who I was talking to. She called me over and asked who my chat buddy was. I told her about this old man who wanted to come inside and play with me and my toys. My mom figured it was just an imaginary friend and told me it was okay for him to come in, not realizing she was actually inviting something way less friendly into our home. This old man wasn't the harmless type. As a kid, I didn't catch on, but as I got older, it was clear he wasn't just a figment of my imagination. He was something sinister. He'd knock on our doors and windows, shuffle stuff around, and was the reason I could never walk down our stairs normally. I had to go backwards because he'd try to push me. He'd make these loud, thumping sounds going up or down the stairs. By the time I was 12, we started sleeping in the living room because it felt like he had taken over the upstairs, where our bedrooms were. I had a ton of sleep paralysis episodes up there, with this old guy coming at me. Dark eyes, around 60, 70, mouth agape, speaking in this raspy voice. He never said much, but when he did, it felt like he was trying to tell me something. One night in the living room, I had an out-of-body experience. I saw myself and my parents sleeping, and then I noticed this shadow by the kitchen door staring at my mom. Suddenly, my mom had sleep paralysis, but this time, it wasn't the old man she saw, but a demon with a long cloak holding chains. It flung them around my mom's feet, dragging her off the couch. She was completely motionless until she hit the floor, which is when she finally screamed, waking my dad and me up. She was so shaken, she couldn't even speak. After telling my dad what I saw, we got a priest to cleanse our house. My mom had trouble walking for a week after that. The craziest part? When we were moving out and fetching boxes from the attic, we found a photo of the old man. We prayed over it, burned it, and I finally felt at peace. Turns out, he was my friend's grandpa, who used to live in our house before us. I make it a point to visit his grave whenever I'm back in our old town. I just felt like sharing this story here, even though I haven't really talked about it much before. Anyone else have something similar happen to them? I was feeling a bit restless one day and thought it'd be interesting to dive into some ghostly tales and share my own eerie experiences. First encounter. Back in 2016 or 2017, when I was about 9 or 10, I used to hang out with my neighbor's daughters. One chilly October evening, around 7:30 or 8, we were playing football in the street, since the park was taken over by gamblers and addicts. The ball ended up under a car, perfectly centered underneath. This car was parked outside a house that all of us kids were convinced was haunted, right next to a school, and only a stone's throw from a McDonald's. As we tried to retrieve the ball, one of the girls spotted a man with oddly shaped arms who bolted when noticed. We brushed it off, joking he was just drunk. But then, Glancing towards the school, whose gates were usually locked, I saw a woman in a bridal dress, bleeding from her forehead. Terrified, I didn't care about getting dirty. I dove under the car, kicked the ball free, and we all sprinted home, never speaking of it again. Second tale. This one's from a visit to my grandmother's house in the summer of 2022. I was sleeping in the living room, near a central hall that connected all the rooms. Around 2 a.m., I kept seeing a shadowy figure of a child darting through the hall. Initially, I thought it was just my imagination from too much screen time. But it happened several times. Eventually, I saw the shadow near my bed, which freaked me out enough to listen to the Hanuman Chalisa until I fell asleep. Third story. This involves a sort of possession. In September this year, my aunt had a baby boy, the first male born into their family this generation. According to tradition, the uncle, which in this case was me, due to the absence of a direct uncle, had to perform a certain ritual. While doing so, my grandmother suddenly fainted. When she came to, she started laughing in a way that was uncharacteristic, leading to a conversation where it was implied she was momentarily possessed by my great-grandmother's spirit, wanting to celebrate the birth. Fourth incident. Just yesterday, on October 5th, I was on the terrace room at around 8 p.m. Opening the door, I was greeted by the sight of 5 white flames hovering in the air. Whether it was my imagination or not, it sent shivers down my spine. Fifth experience. Returning home from the ashram metro station one evening, I took my usual route. All was well lit and bustling, except for one dark alley I had to pass through. Halfway down, near a park, I detected the unmistakable smell of a crematory, a scent I recognized from previous sad visits. No crematoriums are nearby, so this was unexpected. The smell triggered a panic in me, and just as I was passing the park gate, a light flickered on, prompting me to run non-stop until I was safely away. Growing up in a devout family, I've always heard stories affirming the existence of spirits from my grandmother, a woman who's never steered me wrong. These experiences have only deepened my belief in the supernatural. I recently started working at a hospital, and there's this one building, constructed back in 1867, that caught my attention. It's got stunning architecture and the kind of eerie hallways that just scream ghost stories. Curious, I asked around to see if any staff had their own tales to share. One staff member, let's call him Dave, shared 3 intriguing stories with me. Story 1. Dave recounted a night when the security brake box malfunctioned. A security team member checked it out and then called Dave for repairs. However, when Dave arrived, the security guy was anxiously waiting in the car park, far from the back entrance where the fix was needed. Dave ventured alone. While working on the brake box, Dave heard what sounded like marbles or small stones being tapped against a brick wall. Annoyed, he yelled down to the security guard, accusing him of messing around. The guard insisted he was stationary, sparking confusion. The tapping persisted, with no visible cause. After fixing the box, Dave confronted the guard, who then admitted hearing similar sounds before, which was precisely why he refused to approach the building. Story 2. Dave also mentioned the building's basement, complete with a long hallway flanked by open stairs and lined with pipes and relics of its operational past. One evening, While walking down this hallway with a colleague, Dave noticed a swift, shadowy figure darting at the corridor's end. Dismissing it as a trick of the light or his imagination, he was taken aback when his colleague inquired if he'd seen it, too. The colleague described witnessing the same shadowy figure, having encountered it multiple times, but assuming it was his own shadow. Story 3. On another occasion, Dave and a different colleague were in the attic, using only their head torches for light. In a moment of jest, the colleague called out for any spirits to show a sign. Instantly, a loud crash echoed from across the attic, yet a thorough check revealed no possible source for the noise. No fallen boxes, no human nor animal presence. The startled colleague regretfully noted he might have provoked something. It's well known among staff that most avoid entering this building alone at night, and even security guards skip it during their rounds, overwhelmed by fear despite the surveillance cameras. Knowing all this, and perhaps a bit more, would it be foolish to ask for permission to explore these haunted hallways at night, to see if there's any truth to the ghostly tales? Probably, but am I going to ask anyway? Absolutely. Growing up in a house so famously haunted that my friends would only ever brave a sleepover once has left me with a trove of eerie tales. Let's dive into the daily oddities first. The house was built over a garage and storage area, effectively raising the living space off the ground. This meant no chance of animal noises from below, yet we'd still hear unmistakable footsteps pacing down the hallway when I was the sole person home. Then there was the pantry door, mysteriously ajar every morning despite my dad's routine of closing it before heading off to work at 4 a.m., often blaming me for leaving it open. Now, for the more intense experiences. One day, a friend and I were heading back to my place when I realized I'd forgotten my key. I asked him to wait at the front while I checked the back door, which we seldom locked thanks to our Neo-Mastiff's presence. As I entered through the kitchen, I was met with a shadow cast across the T-intersection of the hallway. The sun was positioned in such a way that my shadow couldn't have been cast where it was, and as I moved, the shadow remained static. In a heartbeat, it dashed towards the living room and out the front, its footsteps echoing as it passed. I initially thought intruder and gave chase, only to find my friend at the front door, and no sign of anyone else. Another chilling moment occurred late one night at the computer. The unmistakable sensation of hot breath brushed against the back of my neck, sending me leaping from my chair. Then there was the evening I was watching TV with one of my sisters. Deciding to head to bed, I bid her good night, and as I passed my parents' room, I caught a glimpse of what I assumed was my youngest sister in white pajamas, reflected in the mirror. It wasn't until I saw my sister, engrossed in a Naruto game in her room, that I realized the hallway was empty. "Damn it, Bob," I muttered, having long since nicknamed our resident ghost for ease of reference. The climax of these hauntings came during a friend's sleepover when we were 19. The night passed uneventfully until the early hours when the room's lights flickered to their afterglow setting, rousing my friend. This was followed by the front door violently shaking, as if someone were desperately trying to enter. Then, the sound of footsteps pacing the hallway ensued, lasting for what seemed like an eternity. My friend, paralyzed with fear, remained hidden under his blanket until morning. swearing off ever spending another night in that house. These incidents are just a glimpse into the myriad of supernatural occurrences that defined my childhood home, each as memorable as they were terrifying.